because think we all have done that. We've all made a decision and put our foot down about something and fixed it or changed it or did whatever it was once we got there. And that's just because of the decision. It's not because you knew how to do whatever that thing was. It's just because you said, all right, enough is enough. I'm going to go do this thing, fix this thing, take care of this thing. You kind of have to do that when you think about doing something like starting a business or investing in real estate because of how challenging it is.
I'm happy we're making this happen too. I just wanted to jump right in and talk about kind of what the people, like people around you, your family, friends, like if they looked at maybe teenage Henry, what their expectations for you would have been growing up, like what they thought you would have ended up doing.
Man, so my parents were just big on me getting a college degree and finding a good corporate job. When I was little, I used to tell my dad I wanted to be a lawyer, tell my mom I wanted to be a lawyer. And that was really only because my sister wanted to be a doctor and I wanted to pick something that would compete with that.
Mhm.
Once I truly figured out what being a lawyer meant and how much how much studying and reading I would have to do,
Yeah.
uh, I was out. I was out for that. But I did find a love for technology as I was growing up. And so I think I did what they expected me to do, which was to go into some sort of technological field. And so I bet I did what they thought I would do.
But you grew up around a family of entrepreneurs, right? Didn't your dad always kind of
Yeah.
had a side hustle? And can you
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about that and how that influenced you?
Yeah. So my dad was a high school art teacher.
Cool.
That was his day job. He's always been an artist and had a passion for art and teaching art. But teachers don't make a ton of money, right? And when you're a husband and you got two kids, you gotta figure out a way to make money. And my dad liked to travel and do all these things, and so I wanted to figure out a way to live, to afford a comfortable lifestyle on a teacher's salary, and that meant he was going to have to figure out other ways to make money. And so he did. I mean, he's done a lot of stuff. He used to grow plants at home and then sell them at the swap meet. He used to own an arcade back when you had to go to arcades to play games. Uh, he We owned a barbecue restaurant for a good portion of my youth. So I kind of grew up watching my dad and my grandma kind of run this barbecue restaurant. And so, yeah, he always had a side business, but never like we never talked about me being an entrepreneur owning a business. That wasn't something that like he made it a point to teach me about. Um, because of what I said, he wanted us to go to college and get a degree, right?
Yeah.
That was an opportunity that wasn't afforded to people like him or his age
Right.
when he grew up, and so he wanted to make sure that that was something that would be within reach for me and my sister, and so that's what he pushed us towards.
So you fulfilled his expectations, kind of went along a traditional path.
Yeah,
Tell me about that. That next chapter of going into the corporate world and settling in there and just kind of like what your
yeah,
mind space was at that time.
yeah. So I graduated and I did. I had good enough grades to get a decent job. Um, and in my first year I didn't make much money, but I'd say about 5 years in I was making pretty decent money, six figures,
Mhm.
but didn't have a financial education per se.
Mhm.
And I think, like, when you come from nothing,
Mhm.
right, and then you build something,
Right.
right, there's a challenge to that, right, because you've got to build something out of nothing, and then that causes you to like respect and appreciate what you have. Like, it's a
Mhm.
different challenge. The challenge that I had was kind of the opposite, is that I had a pretty upper middle class life because of my dad's side hustles, coupled with his teaching salary. Plus my mom had a really great job. She worked for the county and had a high position within the county. And so, like, we had, like, I didn't want for anything. I had everything I
Mhm.
needed, right? And so when I got to the point where I was out on my own, I was accustomed to a certain lifestyle and
Right.
almost felt entitled
Mhm.
to continuing to have that lifestyle even before I could afford it. And so I lived above my means. So I would, I had a much nicer apartment than, or a nicer and bigger apartment than probably I should have afforded or paid for. I
Mhm.
had probably a nicer car than I should have paid for, but I didn't want to lose my lifestyle, and I felt like
Right.
I got a good job. I can pay for
Yeah.
it, so I'll do it.
Right.
But what I wasn't doing was saving any money or positioning myself to be able to be able to buy a home or do anything that's going to require me to think beyond just this week. And so what happened was I got married, and I got married pretty quick. So I went from single to married in a matter of 365 days. And that kind of really shined a light on the fact that you have made poor financial decisions, and up until this point didn't matter, because it didn't matter to
Mhm.
me. I would live with the consequences of it, but now the
Yeah.
consequences of those poor financial decisions were affecting somebody else, and it really shined a light on you know what that was, and made me think, how am I going to solve this problem of not understanding money and not having enough of it to afford the lifestyle that I want.
So, at what age was that when you got married? It was a little later, wasn't it?
Yeah, I got married later. I was 20. What's it? I've been married for 9 years, and I'm 43. So do that math. So
I don't do public math.
yeah, yeah, same, same. So
So you got married later. So
yeah,
you led a really good lifestyle. You've got a good six-figure salary. You've got nice apartment, nice
yeah,
car, eating well, all
yeah,
that, taking nice vacations. You get married.
yep,
Talk to me about that transition, because I recently got married too, and that does put a
yeah,
spotlight on your own financial habits and just makes you make changes almost. So tell me about that. Like, what happened when you guys you become married, and how do you
yeah,
change? Like, you've recognized you've got some issues.
yeah. Um, I think the solve for me was like, I just need to figure out how to make some more money. I just thought the more
Mhm.
money I make, I'd be able to solve the problems, and
Right.
so that essentially what happened was I had a conversation with my wife about our financial future. So what we were gonna, what's our dream house? Where's it gonna
Mhm.
be? How many kids are we gonna have? Like the newly married talk, right? Where you're like, let's plan our lives together. And uh, I was just realizing through that conversation with my wife that, like, I don't think I can afford any of these
Mhm.
things that you or slash we want. And that led me to a literal, like a real live freak out panic attack at 3 in the morning, because
Mhm.
we're men and we feel this pressure of having to provide, and then not realizing how I'm going to be able to do that led me to thinking, your brain one's wild, and it's like, well, she's going to realize that, I can't provide for her, and she's going to realize she made this big mistake marrying me, and she's going to leave me because
Mhm.
I can't do any of these things. And just had a full-fledged panic attack at 3 in the morning. And so I just Googled, how can I make extra money? Because I think the first thing I Googled was side hustles. Like, what are some good side
Yeah.
hustles that I could, and I just kept seeing stuff about real estate. And so I was
Mhm.
like, all right, well, what's this real estate thing about? Because every time I see something about real estate, I see words like cash flow and passive income, and I'm like, that sounds like the ticket right there, right? Like,
Mhm.
making money without having to do a bunch of work, right? Sounds great. And and as I started to dive into these articles, I was just learning that, like, I was just seeing that, like, this is something normal people do. I just never viewed real estate as a viable option before. I thought you had to have a bunch of money to go do it, and I didn't have a bunch of money, and so I just thought rich people invested in real estate, in businesses. I didn't think like normal people did. But as I was reading these articles, I was like, all these people have figured out how to do this, and some of them said they didn't have a ton of money. So, like, if they figured it out, I got to be able to figure it out. They're no smarter than me. And
Mhm.
so I don't know, man. I just had this piece about being able to figure out how to do it. And, I can't really explain that other than I think just God gave me a piece about it, like, because that was the
Yeah.
path I was supposed to go down. And so, like, I literally calmed down and was like, all right, must be what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to be a successful real estate investor. And so I just kind of made a decision at 3 in the morning that I was going to figure out how to do it. And went to bed, woke up the next morning, told my wife I was going to figure out how to be a real estate investor. And she'd always liked real estate. And her family has some background with owning real estate. So she was like, "Yeah, yeah, let's do that." And so that's how we started down the path, man.
So, but prior to that, you had no interest really in learning about finances or reading,
Yeah. So
studying, things like
let me
that?
put some perspective on what I just said. So no part about that decision makes any sense, right?
Right.
So I didn't know how to invest in real estate, no clue,
Right.
right? When I made this
Mhm.
decision that I was going to figure it out. I didn't have any of the things that would lead you to believe that I should invest in real estate. I didn't
Mhm.
have a big savings account ready to use for a down payment. I had $1,000 in a savings account. That was it. I didn't
Right.
have good credit. I still had a sub 600 credit score. And something in me was like, you know how you're going to fix your financial problems? You know how you're going to fix the problem of you not being able to be on the loan for the house that you're currently living in? You're going to buy houses. That's how you're going to fix it, right? Like it made no sense. Um, but that's kind of the level of crazy you need to have in order to take on something like this. Like it's we don't we don't get to know how. Like we're not supposed to know how.
Mhm.
Um, but if you make a decision, your decision can lead you to the how, right? And I think that well, I know that that's what happened. Is I turned my brain on to the concept, to the idea that I was going to figure this out. And so, like when you do that, it's like you're turning your most powerful weapon in your body, which is your brain, into a tool that's helping you. Like that's what you're doing when you make a decision. I don't think people realize how powerful just making a decision is if you truly
Mhm.
make it in your with your words, with your actions behind the words, and with your heart. Like when you decide, because think we all have done that. We've all made a decision and put our foot down about something and fixed it or changed it or did whatever it was once we got there. And that's just because of the decision. It's not because you knew how to do whatever that thing was. It's just because you
Mhm.
said, all right, enough is enough. I'm going to go do this thing, fix this thing,
Yeah.
take care of this
Yeah.
thing. You kind of have to do that when you think about doing something like starting a business or investing in real estate because of how challenging it is.
So, what do you think it was about real estate, though? I mean, you're looking at a lot of different side hustles and passive
Yeah. Yeah.
income methods of making money. What was it about real estate that like rang your bell or, lit you up?
Mm, I think it was a combination of how much I enjoyed what I thought real estate was at the time.
Mhm.
And so like I enjoyed like the house we were living in, like we hadn't been in it that long. And so we had just gone through a whole like house shopping phase. And
Mhm.
then we ended up picking a house that we ended up building. So we went through this whole build process.
Okay.
And I just know how much I enjoyed all of that process, looking at houses and evaluating houses and talking to the builders and the lenders. Like I just enjoyed the whole process. And I was like,
Mhm.
I know I enjoy it because I just did it. And now I can do it in a way that's gonna make me money. Like I was just excited about that.
So, you have this panic attack, you start learning about real estate. What happens next where you've
Yeah.
made this commitment to real
Yeah.
estate? How do you get
It
your wife
just
on board? You
magically
said she
falls in your lap. After you make a
Yeah, right.
decision, the heavens open
Boom.
up and deals fall from the sky,
You
and
don't
then
have to do
money comes
anything.
out of nowhere, and then you're successful. That's
Right.
yeah. uh, You know, I like to talk about this through story because if I
Mhm.
just tell you what I
Yeah.
did, it sounds super simple, and people go, "Oh, okay, of course you did that, right?" Like
Yeah, right, right.
so. Here's what actually happened. So I decided I was going to be a real estate investor. Woke up, told my wife, and then she goes, "That's great. How do we do it?" And I go, "I have
Yeah.
no idea,
Right.
but people around here are doing it.
Yeah.
So let's talk to somebody who's doing it." And so I went and I had a meeting with the person I knew who was she was a commercial real estate broker. She worked at Walmart like I did too. So she sat in the desk next to me. And so I told her, I was like, hey, I'm going to invest in real estate. I know you do some of that on the side too. Like, can I just talk to you about it? Maybe you can point me in some direction. And she was like, hype. She was like, yes. Right. And
Mhm.
so we went to dinner and she brought a box of books, a literal box of books. And she was like, pick one of these books and read it. And if you read it, I'll help you. And I was like, cool. And so I was like, "Ooh, I think I've heard this title before. And what did I pick?
Uh-huh. Rich Dad Poor Dad, I think, right?
Absolutely. But I knew nothing about it. Like I literally all I had thought was I'm like, this name sounds familiar. And so I read that book. So like no one had told me this is the real estate book to read. Like
Yeah.
just happened to pick it, read it, blew my mind. And
Mhm.
so and so from there, I was like, all right, who else around me is doing this? Like in my brain, I was like, I just need to be around people doing it so I can see
Mhm.
what they're doing and start to
Yeah.
apply some of those things. And so I just started Googling real estate investor meetups. And I would go to these meetups and I would be super intentional about like what I wanted to get out of these meetups. Right. I would say, so I forced myself. I said, if I'm going to these meetups, I'm not here just to, sit in the back and try to, learn by osmosis and maybe somebody will say something of value. I was like, I got to be intentional because I don't know nothing
Mhm.
about nothing. So I was like, you're going to sit in the front and center because who sits front and center? Like in school, who sits front and center? The nerds, right? Because they're not afraid to
Yeah.
be called on. They know the answer. Right. And so
Right.
I'm like, I'm gonna go sit in the front. So the people up front either know something or they're doing deals in my head. So I'm like, I'm gonna go sit by them so I can just start asking them questions. And I was like, I just start asking them about their deals or like what they're doing because I didn't know what to ask. And what I learned was real estate investors will tell you everything. Like they'll tell you everything. And so I was like,
Yep.
yeah, what was your last deal? What'd you do? And they're like, oh, I bought this house in this neighborhood and I paid this and then we put this much into it and then I sold it for that. And then I did this one and I rented it for that. And then I did this. And I was just like taking all these notes because I'm learning like what good deals look like. I'm learning where people like to buy properties in my area. I'm learning what kinds of properties they're buying. I'm learning how much money they're putting into them. I'm learning what they're doing to make money on them, how they're exiting them. Like I was just like, half of it I didn't know what it meant, but I was just like, I was writing all this down, right? And so
Mhm.
you attune it to like let's say like real estate investing is the puzzle, right? It's a whole puzzle, but I don't
Yep.
know what any of the pieces mean. So I would
Mhm.
go to these meetups and start asking questions, and everybody would give me pieces of the puzzle. I didn't know where
Yep.
they fit yet, but I was just collecting pieces of the puzzle,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And then as I would do more research in terms of podcasts and books, the frame of reference would start to come into play, and I'm like, oh, this piece goes here, oh, this piece
Mhm.
goes here, right? And so all the context started to make sense as I got more information from learning, plus the conversations I was having with people. But what really was important about the meetups was I was intentional about going to every single one, no matter what, right? I didn't just go to one here and there. Like I was at
I
every
mean, were
meetup.
these like several a week that you were going
Yeah.
to?
So I would go to the meetups and then I would ask the people in the meetups who were doing deals what other meetups they were a part of. And so they would
Mhm.
tell me. And so I just had this list. And so I would go to probably one to two meetups a week. Like
Right.
I was just at them. Every meetup, every sub meetup of a meetup, like I was in the room because I'm like,
Yep.
A, I gotta learn. And so what happened again, like this is all, if you look back, it seems like it's like, like I had this foresight. I didn't. I just wanted to be around them. And so like,
Right.
but what happened was, yes, I started to get the pieces, but real estate investors truly do want to help other real estate investors be successful. And so when people got used to seeing me at these meetups and they started to just assume that I
Mhm.
was a successful investor doing deals because I'm just out there all the time asking questions at every meetup, right? And so when they started to realize like I had never done a deal, they were like, "Oh man, we gotta help you. We gotta help you get a deal, man. Like we gotta do
Right.
this, right?" Like because they just wanted to see you be successful. And so I
Mhm.
just built this network of people who wanted to help me, not because I just showed up one time, but because they could see me putting so much
Yeah.
time in and I didn't have
Right.
a result yet. And so they were like, this is somebody we want to help get a result because they're putting in the effort.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so that's how I built a network and started to learn. And then on top of that was researching on my own and doing podcasts and books and things. So that was like really step one. And so one of the other things I did was I was intentional about what I told people. And so even though I had never done a deal, even though I had only been to a couple of meetups, I started to just introduce myself to people as a real estate investor. So, you probably go to meetups today and you'll see somebody there and you're like, hey, what do you do? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, I'm a stockbroker and, I got a couple rental properties. Oh, yeah, I'm a software developer and I got a couple, and I flip a house or two, right? I didn't want that to be my persona. My persona was I am a real estate investor. I buy
Yeah.
properties here and I buy these kinds of properties in these neighborhoods. And I'm a software developer for Walmart, right? Like I wanted my persona to be that of a real estate investor because I do know, like the way the world works, and I did know at the time, the way the world works
Mhm.
is you get what you give, right? And
Right.
so if I wanted the things real estate investors have, I had to put out into the world that I'm a real estate investor. And then the world would return those things to me. And so I would tell everybody I'm a real estate investor, um, just because I wanted to get the things that they have. And between telling everybody I was an investor, building the network, I got a call one day from my buddy, and he said, "Hey," we worked in the same office, but he called me. He's like, "Hey, somebody told me you're buying houses," and I'm like, "Yeah, I am buying houses." He was like,
Mhm.
"Dude, I got to sell my house in the next 30 days." And I was like, "What?" Because this is a buddy of mine. I knew him. I'd been to his house many times. He was like, "Yeah, man, I
Mhm.
moved out of my house like a year ago. I've been letting this guy live in it from my church. He was supposed to be getting his credit together. So he was going to buy the house because I need the money from that house to go buy this property for this new church we started." And I was like, "Okay, so what's going on?" He was like, "Well, his credit's not together. He's not really taking care of the house. And now I got to have the money because we got to buy this property. So I need the money in 30 days." He was like, "So I can sell you my house if you want to buy it for $116,000. It's worth probably 165, $175,000. But I'll sell it to you for 116 just because I gotta have that money. That's the exact amount of money I need if I sell it for that for me to go do my next for
Mhm.
me to go buy this land." And he was like, "So could you buy it in 30 days?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I can buy it in 30 days. Of
With
course."
$1,000 in your
With a
bank account,
thousand
right?
dollars in bad credit, right? So and so he was like, "All right, well, what do we do?" And I was like, "Hold on." And so I went back to my desk and I Googled, like, how do I buy a house without a real estate agent? And it was like, you got to
Mhm.
put it you got to put it in escrow and under contract. And I was like, what's under contract? And it was like, you got to sign a purchase and sale agreement. And I was like, where do I get a purchase and sale agreement? Right. Like, I was literally
Mhm.
Googling everything, downloaded a contract off the internet, printed it out, signed it at work with me and him that I was going to buy his house for $116,000 and closing was in 30 days. And so I was just sitting there now with this signed contract at my office for this house. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm buying a house. Now I gotta get $116,000, right? And so I need 116,000. I know I got $1,000 in savings, so now I need $115,000. So where am I going to get $115,000? I was like, all right, well, people go to banks when they need a loan for a house, so I'll just go to a bank. And so on my lunch break that day, I went to the closest bank to my office just because it was the closest bank to my office, and I walked in there with the contract, and I was like, "Hey, can somebody help me buy this house?" Right? I literally walked in the office with the lobby with the contract, and it just happened to be a small community bank. I did not know that's what that was when I walked in, and I just happened to talk to the commercial loan officer who was in the lobby. He was just in the lobby talking to the tellers. And so he was like, "Yeah, man, let me take a look at that." And he looked at it and he was like, "Come to my office." And he put in the address and he was like, "Dude, this house is worth a lot more than this, right?" And I was like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. That's why I
That's why
want to
I'm
buy
buying
it."
it.
Yeah. And he was like, "I mean, I'd love to loan on this, man." He was like, and so he just started to tell me how it works. He was like, "We would lend on this. We would lend you the money, the 85% of the purchase price. We would lend you 100% of the money you need to fix it up. So all
Mm.
you need to bring is a 15% down payment. So we're going to give you the money to buy it and the money to renovate it. You just need 15% down payment." And I was like, "Cool. How much is that?" And he was like, "It's going to be about 15 grand." And I was like, "Okay." He was like, "Do you have 15 grand?" And I was like, "Yep." Right. Right. uh, so I was terrified, but excited. I was excited because I walked into the bank. needing 115,000. I walked out needing 15,
Right.
right? I'd found $100,000 in my mind. So I was like,
Uh-huh.
I'm getting there. Now I
Yeah.
got to figure out where to get 15 grand in 30 days. That number's drastically dropped, right? In a matter of
Right.
hours.
Yeah.
And so that's when I went back to this network of investors. I was excited. I finally had a deal. They wanted to help me. And I was like, great, now you can help me. And so I went and I was like, how are y'all doing this? How do I get 15 grand in 30 days to buy this house? And they sat down with me and just started brainstorming ideas. You could do this, you could do that, you could do it. I'm like, that won't work. Don't have that. That won't work. And then my buddy was like, you could borrow it from a 401k. And I was like, I don't want to cash out the 401k because you got to pay penalties and fees and interest and yada, 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 and taxes right off the top. And he was like, no, 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 no. You can borrow against your 401k like a loan to yourself. It's your
Right.
money. You borrow a percentage of it. And then your company will take the payments out of your paycheck automatically. But if you rent that property out and your tenant's paying you XYZ rent, that cash flow you get actually covers that payment. So you're actually not paying it back. And I was like, let's do that.
Yeah.
I just got to find a 401k now. Right. So, because I didn't have one, but
Right.
my wife did. And so now
Mhm.
I went to her and I said, hey, baby, you know how your voice gets higher when you
Oh,
need
yeah.
it? I was like,
Baby.
hey,
Yeah.
baby,
Yeah.
remember that time when I was like, we're gonna be
Uh-huh.
real estate investors, and you were like, yeah, well,
Yeah.
we need to borrow 15 grand from your 401k so we can buy this house. And I explained to her everything, and she was like, yeah, let's do it.
Wow.
We had the money in like a week. We bought the
Mhm.
house, raised the rents to market rent, cash flowed the property, and then the bank called me after we closed and was like, Henry,
How do you get started with stock investing? I've put together a course to teach you everything I wish I knew when I first started investing in stocks. Let's start at the beginning and ask, what is a stock? Let's zoom on in into what it's actually like to buy a stock. A few options are Charles Schwab, TD Ameritrade, Ally, E-Trade. Fortunately, you won't have to necessarily calculate all of these taxes yourself. I'll outline a few main ones to be aware of throughout your lifetime investing journey. As Warren Buffett says, your best investment is yourself. There's nothing that compares to it. By the end, you'll be savvier about stock investing and personal finance than the vast majority of people. Even if you're not a total beginner, I'm confident you'll get a lot out of the principles and strategies I outline, which we'll build on throughout. A link to the course is available in the description below. See you there.
this is a really great deal. We want you to bring us more deals like this. And
Mhm.
so you should consider taking out a line of credit on the equity that you bought in this house. And I was like, what's that? And he explained to me what a line of credit was. And he was like, so the way it would work is you go find more deals like this. We'll fund the same thing, 85% of the purchase, 100% of the reno, and then use this line of credit from us to pay that 15% down payment. So you're not actually coming out of your own pocket to buy the house. And then you'll
Right.
fix the house up and you can either refinance it and you can pay off the line of credit, or you can fix the house up and sell it and you can pay off the line of credit. And I was like, what? Yeah, let's do that. Right. And so, like, I had now found and learned the power of small local banks. This
Mhm.
guy, I mean, he was teaching me so much just by explaining this process. Because essentially what he was saying to me was like, hey, if you bring me deals like this, I look like a rock star in loan committee because I'm going in and
Exactly.
I'm saying, we're going to lend this guy on this house that's worth $170,000. We're only loaning 116. If he forecloses and doesn't make his payments, we'll probably make more money just repossessing the house and then selling it on our own versus the
Yeah.
interest he's paying for it. So I'm bringing them these safe investments that they want to fund because local community banks have to lend to local businesses to stay in business. They don't do what the big banks do, which is sell off their loans. They keep them all. And so they need to service safe loans. And so I was bringing him safe loans. So he was like, bro, you can be leveraged 100% if you're going to bring us these good deals, and then you could
Mhm.
buy these great deals, you could start making money, we're going to make money. And so I just learned a lot about the financing aspect of using small local banks. This guy was kind enough to, talk me through some of that stuff. And so I started to go out in the community and build more relationships with these small local banks.
There's so many things I love about your story. The first thing is like you took on the identity,
Yeah.
like a new identity of real estate investor. Like I think that
Yeah.
is huge. The second thing that's super interesting is like the absolute commitment you made to it,
Hmm.
to making real estate happen for you. And then the third thing is just like surrounding yourself with other people, this network that you of
Yeah.
going to all these meetups. I interviewed this guy, Scott Young, who came out with the book recently called Get Better at Anything. And it's all
Hmm.
about how to learn. It could be anything,
Yeah.
but like the best learners get themselves around the people that are like top in their field of doing what they want to learn. So in your
Yep.
case, you want to learn real estate, you surrounded yourself with people and it's like you just get it by osmosis in many
Yeah.
ways. I love your analogy of the puzzle pieces. It's like a
Yeah.
little you get a piece here and you piece here, you put it in your pocket.
Yeah.
The lender also sounds like he was a
Yeah.
great resource, obviously, like not only from a funding standpoint, but just
Yeah.
as teaching you a ton.
So yeah, I like telling that story because the lessons in it are very basic and very
Yeah.
easy to do. And if you just say the lessons, like if I'd have just said, "Oh, just go find some people who are doing it and surround yourself with them, and you'll learn what to do." Oh, and just don't take no for an answer, and you'll get a deal done, right? Like the
Yeah.
the lessons in there are yes, I surrounded myself with somebody, but I think that one of the biggest lessons is I didn't know how, and I didn't make decisions for other
Hmm.
people about my wealth. I didn't let
Right.
what would people would consider common sense stop me from
Hmm.
pursuing. The only thing that was going to stop me from pursuing was somebody who was a barrier to entry actually telling me I can't and here's why, right? What
Hmm.
most people do, like in this situation, if you put another person in the same exact situation, when their buddy would have called him and said, I need to sell my house in 30 days, and they were in my financial situation, the first thing they would have said was, man, I'd love to buy it, but
Yeah.
I only got
But
to I don't have
yeah.
the down payment. I can't make the down payment. Well, how do you know? You haven't even shopped for a loan yet. You don't even know if you need a
Right.
down payment. You have no clue what kind of loan you're going to get, right? Or they
Yep.
would have said,
Yep.
"Man, I want to, but my credit's not in a good place. Nobody's going to give me a loan." How do you know? You haven't applied for a loan, you haven't talked to a lender, you haven't pulled your credit to see what you can do to fix it. Like you've taken none of the steps to actually learn if that's actually true. But we make decisions for other people all the time. Most people would make that
Hmm.
decision for a bank they haven't talked to yet. The bank I don't even know that I would talk to yet's not going to give me a loan. That sounds crazy, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
so I didn't make decisions for other people about my wealth. I was going to go down this path until somebody who held the key for me to get through that door was telling me it was locked and there's no way I was going to get through it.
Right. Yeah. It's that absolute commitment is amazing. I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about the lady that gave you the box of books, or showed up with the box of books. Did you
Kanisha
do
Robnett.
further books? Kanisha, did you do further book studies with her? And like, did you continue to read books? And
Oh yeah, I
was
can.
she a mentor of sorts, like
Yeah, she was
kind of
like my
pushing you
first,
along?
unofficial mentor into real estate. I don't even know if she knows that. But
Uh huh.
yeah, her excitement about it when I told her that's what I wanted to do made me feel good. She absolutely put that book in our hands, and she sat next to me at work, and so like I was just able to chat with her and talk to her about what we were doing along the way. Yeah, from there we read. I, so we read. I say we because my wife and I read them at the same time. We both just
Oh, great. Yeah.
I did the audiobook and she like actually read through it. And so from there we read that. The next thing we read was Richest Man in Babylon. And then I
Hmm.
read Gary Keller's The Millionaire Real Estate Investor.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
and all of these things just started to again, these they were the books were giving me the context and I was getting
Hmm.
the pieces from people doing it. And so that's what really helped me kind of put the puzzle together and learn like what everything really meant. But yeah, she was instrumental. I don't even know if she knows how instrumental she was.
No, it's awesome. I wanted to talk a little bit about just the role of faith in your own life, like how that has impacted you and kind of affected your business life, your real estate career. You know, y- like you said, a lot of people would have hit that first door. They would have said, "I don't have $15,000. I have no way to get it." You definitely had this faith that you could figure things out and make things work out. So talk to me about that, just like
Yeah.
how your own faith has affected you along your path.
Bro, you trying to get me crying on this show. Yeah, so I think the best way I could paint it is right after we closed that deal I told you about, that first deal, and the bank called and talked to me about the line of credit, and then I got access, and then I got approved for the line of credit. I remember sitting there looking at this 25 to $30,000 that I had access to on a line of credit, and just sitting here thinking like 90 days ago you had a panic attack because you didn't know how you're going to take care of your family financially. And now 90 days later, you own a house. You use very little of your own money to buy it. That house is paying for itself and paying you cash every month. And now you're staring at $30,000 in the face. And I just became overwhelmed with a sense of responsibility. I was happy. Don't get me wrong. Like I felt like I knew I had found the thing that was going to take care of my family financially for the rest of my life. I was happy. But the main feeling I felt was this weight of responsibility. And when I thought about why, all I could think of was like when I had that peace of mind of knowing real estate was the path I should go down, I was like, that was God telling me this is the path I should go down.
Mhm.
And sitting here now, 90 days later, like I'm not sitting here because I'm some financial genius. I am
Mhm.
only sitting here in this situation because he showed me the door and I walked through it and he
Yeah.
kept opening the doors for me to walk through. And so I just kept thinking, well, why me? Like, why did he do that for me? And I couldn't come up with anything other than I think I'm supposed to let other people know that this
Mhm.
is a reality for them too. There has to
Yeah.
be other people who are in worse financial positions than I was in, who have no
Mhm.
idea that they could be 90 days away from changing their
Right.
financial future forever. And I think I'm just supposed to share this with people. And so that's what I'll do. And that's when I started my Instagram. I didn't start it because I thought I was going to get 100,000 followers and make a bunch of money. I started it because I had no idea how to share this with anybody. And
Mhm.
people are on the internet. And so I'll just put it on the internet and hopefully it helps somebody. And since I did that, life has changed like, I just think that that's the path I was supposed to go down was to show people and help people. And the more I do that, it seems the more things continue to work out. Like I just think, and what I've learned since that is that, yeah, uh, I'm supposed to share it, but that's what everyone's supposed to do. Maybe
Mhm.
not in the sense of everybody needs to start a social media account and start sharing on the internet, but like that's what life is about. That's what wealth is
Mhm.
about. Like we are on this planet not for what we want and get, but for what we get to do for other people. Like wealth isn't about us. Wealth isn't about what I can accumulate so that I can take care of my family. Wealth is about expanding your capacity to give and help. And it's something we're supposed to give away. We get to leverage it, utilize it while we have it. We get to enjoy it while we have it, but it's not for us. It's for us to do for other people. And so I've just tried to continue to do that.
Kind of reminds me like the parable of the talents. That a lot of people just bury their talents. Like you took your talents and you've multiplied them, and it's like God says, "Good, well done, good and faithful servant."
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty cool, pretty cool story, and all the things that happen along the way. You look back and it is like a God thing. It's
Mhm.
like I couldn't have
Yeah.
written this story on my own.
Ancient.
No way, right?
Right. And that's the other thing too, is people are so scared to start because they don't know how,
Yeah.
right? They go, I want to invest in real estate, but I have no idea what to do. And I don't have all my ducks in a row, right? And we forget that like the whole point is that you don't have all your ducks in a row. Like you're not
Mhm.
supposed to know what the ducks in the row are. If this would have depended on me and my plan, do you think I'd be in the position where I get to do things like work for Bigger Pockets and talk to you
Right.
on this podcast? Like this wasn't in my plan. I
Yep.
wasn't my plan wasn't to be speaking on stages and sharing this with thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. Like that wasn't in my ducks in a row. Like
Right.
you don't want your plan. You-
No, you
your
don't.
plan's not good. You don't need to know how. You just have to decide and let him tell you what the steps are.
Right, right. That's so good. I love it. So I want to take a kind of step back. You're at Walmart. You know, you're working in the IT department. It sounds like you've
Mhm.
bought this first deal. You've got the bank telling you, "Dude, come on, bring us more deals like this." How? Tell me more about like how do you were generating the
Yeah,
deals. You've got the book that's coming out. You
yeah,
know, so we're going to get into like the deal maker book, but I want to just kind of hear about those next steps you were taking along the
yeah.
way to build out your portfolio.
Yeah, that's a perfect transition because the book is about it's called Real Estate Dealmaker because it's about
Hmm.
finding deals and funding deals, right? Half of the book is about how to find good deals, half of the book is about how to find the financing for the deals, right? And the reason I wrote about that specific topic was because those were the two problems. Like when I was going to these meetups and I was networking, this is what I was hearing. And this is
Hmm.
doesn't matter the market cycle you're in. Everybody says these two problems no matter what's happening, right? Like back then, this was 7 years ago. It was so easy to find deals then.
Right.
But everybody I talked to was like, well, I can't find anything to buy. There's no good deals out there. And the other half of the
Hmm.
people were like, oh man, I don't have the money. I can't find the money. So I was like, all right, my corporate life, what they taught us, like at Walmart, we weren't allowed to say problems. Like if there was a problem, you had to say we have an opportunity. Like they drilled that in our
Hmm.
heads. So they did that
Right.
because they want you to see your problems as like not a problem, but like what are you
It's
doing to fix
useful.
it? Right? How are you fixing
Right.
it? What's the opportunity that we're seeing here? And so I was like, all right, the opportunities I see are people can't find deals and people can't find money. So if I can get really good at one of those, then I
Yeah.
know I'm going to be able to make some money because I have a whole bunch of people who have a need now that I'm able to service, right? That's business 101. Find a problem, figure out a way
Right.
to solve it. So I was like,
Hmm.
okay, now that I have this small local bank, what I've solved is the money. Now I know I have the money. And so the other problem I need to solve is to find the deals, right? Because I got the money, I got to go find the deals. So I focused my entire business on like figuring out how to get really good at finding deals. And so I started to study
Hmm.
the people who were good at finding deals in real estate. And the people that every
Hmm.
research I did, all the signs pointed to wholesalers were the people who got really good at finding deals. And so
Yeah.
I studied how to be a wholesaler. Not because I wanted to
Hmm.
wholesale. I don't wholesale. I've never been a wholesaler. I've assigned some
Right.
deals, but like
Right.
maybe 10 ever, right? Of the hundreds of
Hmm.
deals I've done. I didn't study wholesalers to become a wholesaler. I studied wholesalers to figure out how they do their lead flow. And then I just said, if I
Right.
can do that and I get good leads, then I can cherry pick the ones I like the most and I'll sell the rest to all
Yeah.
these people around me who said they can't find deals, right? Or pass on the leads and monetize them that way, right? And so that's what I did. I started to figure out what wholesalers were doing to find deals, and I started to figure out which of those methods made sense for me. And I just went really hard into direct mail at the time.
So I was going to ask, so
Mhm.
what were those methods that work really well? It was
Yeah,
direct mail.
yeah. So for me, and it's still direct mail for me. So
Uh huh.
what I learned was there's a bunch of different ways to find deals, right?
Yeah.
And so I wanted, and also what I learned was real estate's cool in the sense that like we don't have to guess if it works because it's been working for decades. It's worked before we were
Yeah.
born, it'll work after we're gone. How we do it is the same. Like
Yep.
little nuances of it change with technology, but the root is find someone with equity and motivation and then make offers, right? Like
Hmm.
that's
Right.
what you do. And
Yep.
so I was like, okay, I just need to trust that this works. So,
Hmm.
what method makes sense for me? And so, as I started to analyze the methods for finding off market deals, I was like, I don't want to do door knocking because that ain't me. I'm not that guy, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to lie to myself. You know, the big motivational speakers would tell you, suck it up and do it. Just knock doors until you die. And
Right.
right. But I'm like, I'm
Hmm.
not gonna do that. Like I'm not gonna lie to myself about who I am.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, so that doesn't fit me. And so I would just go through each method and think, is this something that I can do for a long enough period of time for it to produce results? Because part of the research I was doing was like, what do all these methods take to work? They got to take
Yeah.
some, like, how long do they take to work? Like, I want to do it right. And so through my research, I realized direct mail works in terms of my personality, because I don't mind talking to people if they're calling me, right? I don't
Yeah.
want to cold call anybody. Again, not in my personality, but if they're calling me, I'm cool with it. Even if they're calling me to curse me out, I'm cool with it. You picked up the phone because you wanted to talk to me, so let's talk, right?
Right.
Um, and what could I afford, right? What I started to learn was that finding deals, no matter what method you choose, whether that method is free to do
Hmm.
or not, it still costs you something. It's either going to
Yeah.
cost you time or it's going to cost you
Hmm.
money. There are absolutely free ways to get deals, but if you want it to be any sort of sustainable deal flow for you, you have to put enough time into it for it to be sustainable for you. And where people fail is they don't fund their strategy appropriately with enough of the resource that it takes, right? Because people, they
Hmm.
go, "Oh, I'll try some mail," and they might send a few hundred mailers for a couple of months. That's throwing money in the toilet. You didn't fund it
Right.
with enough resources. You didn't give it enough time to work, right? And so I was like, what do I have in terms of a budget of time and money, right? And so I take stock of that. And then I go, what method fits the budget and the personality that I have? For me, that was direct
Hmm.
mail. And I said, okay, I'll just hit this relentlessly, consistently until it works, because it works. It's not just going to stop working for me because I tried it. All these other people are doing
Right.
it. It's working.
Right.
So it's going to work for me. I just have to trust it. And so that's what I did. And I did get a couple of deals out of my first campaign, but we still continue to do it.
So you studied the best techniques of the wholesalers that were doing really well. Were you
Mhm.
sending out postcards, or what was your direct mail strategy?
Yeah. So direct mail strategy at the time, um, I was trying to find. So what I would do was, um, I was thinking, so as I was researching, like, because I would listen to podcasts of anybody doing direct mail marketing, right? And I would
Hmm.
just like, I would literally go seeking them out. If you were a guest on a podcast talking about direct mail marketing, I probably listened to it back then, right? And
Right.
so I was trying to figure out, who are these people reaching out to? Like, what are the lists that they're using? And so I would literally listen to these podcasts and I would write down the lists that they were mailing to. And so I just had this list of like criteria that people were mailing to. And then I looked for the common denominators, right? So, and I would see, all right, it seems like 80% of the people are doing absentee owners, right? That was the absentee owners, absentee owners. And I was like, okay, cool.
Hmm.
That's what I'm not going to do.
Right. Don't
Right.
do that.
Right. So I figured out what everybody was doing. And then I figured out what are the ones that people are doing that they say are working, that I see the least on this list, because
Hmm.
I have to compete, right, with seasoned people. And so I
Right.
don't want to mail the same list that the big guys are mailing, because they've got more time, and the time in mail, they got more expertise in knowing what kinds of mail, they've got more expertise in talking to sellers. Like, I'm not trying to compete with them. So who can I send mail to where I'm either going to be their very first piece of mail or their last piece of mail? Like, that's where I want to be, right? And so
Yeah.
so I picked at that time I was picking um, mostly all single family homes, owned in people's personal names, that they had owned for a long period of time, that they were still occupying. So I only did owner occupieds, and I wanted the sellers to be at least 50 years of age or older.
Hmm.
Um, all of those filters were because you assume the longer they're in the home, the more equity that they have, right? And maybe the more
Right.
distress they may have, and lack of time, resources, or patience to actually fix the distress, right? And so that was what I did.
So on 1,000 postcards, what would be the metrics? Would you say on average, like early on, what kind of metrics were you getting out of?
Yeah.
you know,
My first,
1,000 or
my
10,000. I don't know
very
what your
first
numbers
campaign,
were,
I
but
sent 1,000 pieces of mail. I got about 50 phone calls. I saw 20-ish houses and made and got 2 deals from it. My very first
okay.
campaign.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not bad. So you've got this bank though that's funding you. You're
Yeah.
finding these great deals. Were
Yeah.
they still willing
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
work with you?
Yeah, they were. They were. And then as I started to increase the deal flow, I would bring in a different bank. Um,
Okay, you did.
yeah, and then I started to learn even more. I even uh, I found a bank. Essentially, what would happen is, right, you're doing these good deals. They want your business, and so
Sure.
um, I found I would find other banks, and they would give me similar terms. And then one time, I got a deal on a multifamily and an 8-unit building, and uh, the bank I had been using wanted a 15% down payment, but it was for the deal, I needed 50 grand. And I was like, I don't want to put 50 grand down right now. And so I ended up finding another bank who would let me do the same terms, except put 10% down. And so I went with them. And then the bank I was originally using got wind of that and called me, and they were like, hey man, I heard you bought
Yeah.
this, 123 Main Street, and you used, such and such bank. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, why didn't you come to us? And I was like, I did, but you wanted 15% down. These guys gave me 10% down. And they said, well,
Mhm.
what do we need to do so that you bring us your deals first going forward? And I was like, okay, let's talk. And I said, if you can figure out a way where I don't have to put anything down or very little down, I'll bring you every deal first. And
All
she
day
and
long,
she
right?
said, okay. And she went back and she worked out with her bank. And so what they came back with was, we will lend to you at 75% of ARV, of the after repair value. And so as long as you're
Okay.
buying, as long as what you need to purchase and renovate falls under 75% of the after repair value, you don't have to bring anything. And so what I heard was, all right, if I bring you a house that's worth 100 and I'm buying it for 50 and I need 20, then I don't have to put any money down, because that's $70,000. That's less than 75%. I'm in,
Right.
done. And so that's what I would go do. I would go find deals that are under 75% ARV, and they would fund 100%. And I grew my business a lot with that bank.
So had you been renovating all your rentals like the first couple? Did you renovate all of them and do like a value add when you
Yeah.
purchased them?
Yeah, we do mostly value add. I mean, that's if you're going to get deals at that deep of a discount, you're going to end up with value add.
They need help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's interesting. So you're at Walmart.
Yeah.
How are you doing all this? You've got a full-time job, you've
Yeah.
got a family. People's questions are got to be like, well, how did he do all this? Like, what was your time management like? Or
Yeah.
what was a day looking like for you?
Bro, man, you make time for what's important to you, period, point blank.
For sure.
And so what it looked like for me may not be what it looks like for somebody else. Like, you got to figure out, you just got to do it. And
Yeah.
so for
Yeah.
me, the way I managed it was, luckily I had a job where if I needed to take a seller call during the day, as long as I wasn't in a meeting, I could do that. Nobody was,
Yeah.
looking at me like, oh, you're on your phone. Right. So I
Right.
could take seller calls at work. Um, and then I would schedule showings to look at houses and make offers on my lunch break and after work. That's just what I do.
Right.
If I needed to go see a
Right.
house at lunch, that's what I did for lunch that day. If I needed to go see a house after work, that's what I did right after work that day. And then that's when I'd go see houses and make offers. And then after work, I'd hang out with my family.
So you knew eventually you were going to leave Walmart. At what point
Yeah.
did you have like a number, like a monthly income number that you thought like once I hit that I'm gone, or
Mm-mm,
how did that unfold?
mm-mm.
Where you left your
I,
W-2 income?
I fortunately enough enjoyed what I did enough to not be in a rush to leave. Um,
Yeah.
and so I didn't leave until it cost me money to have my job. That's when I left.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to keep it as long as possible, because
Hmm.
having the job makes you more bankable. I was using banks. Like, no matter how
For
much
sure.
I could make $1 million in real estate, they were more comfortable with the $100,000 I made on my W-2 than they were with the $1 million I
That's
was making in real estate. So having the job helped
crazy.
me stay bankable. Um,
Hmm.
and so it made it easier for me to grow and scale. plus I liked what I did, plus benefits
Yeah.
because healthcare is expensive when you
Yeah.
don't have a job that's paying for it out of your out of your right,
Uh,
like,
yes, it is.
and so I didn't necessarily wanna leave until I couldn't stay anymore, and so what happened was, everybody knew what I was doing, like, I didn't hide what I was doing from anybody. Obviously, I told everybody what I was
Hmm.
doing, and so,
Right.
it got to a point where, my company called me and they were like, "Hey, you know, we need you to put, you know, some more focus on this job. We think you're spending too much time doing some other things and we want you to put that time into here. And so we need you to put some more hours in." And I was like, all right, well, let me figure out what that cost me. And so that's when I went and did the
Hmm.
math to figure out, all right, if I give you more hours,
Yeah.
am I losing money? And when I did the math to figure out what I'm making outside of real estate with those hours versus what I would be making by giving them those hours, because they weren't increasing my pay to give me those hours. They were just more hours I was gonna have to give them. I was like, man, I make
Yeah.
way more outside of here. Like the opportunity cost I'd be losing by giving you more hours doesn't make any sense. I was like, so if you that's really what you need from me, then I'm probably gonna have to put in my notice.
So when was that? How long ago?
2021.
2021. All right. So I want to keep talking about the book. Tell me what it was like writing it,
Yeah.
and then who it's geared towards, and then what your hopes are for it.
Yeah, man. Writing a book was hard. Probably
Yeah.
probably one of the hardest things I've done in business. Maybe because my expectation was that it was going to be easy because it's like it's on finding and funding deals. Like I do that in my sleep. You just think you're just going to just sit down, knock it out, write it out, boom, bang, all done. Man, like writing, teaching something in book form uh, was just a challenge, and it's time consuming. It was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard, um, but rewarding. You know. Um,
Bigger Pockets does such a great
yeah,
job with the
yeah.
whole process. It seems like they put out
Yeah,
really
yeah, they
high
make it
quality
easy. They
books.
make it easy,
Yeah.
easier than if it, you know, than
But
probably,
still, you got to do the
but
writing.
it's hard. Yeah, but now for ever, my kids will be able to walk into a bookstore and see a book that Daddy wrote, and
Yeah, it's really cool.
that's worth it. Um,
Really cool.
but yeah, no. So it's called Real Estate Dealmaker. The whole premise of the book is it teaches you, you know, what are all the ways you could potentially find deals, and then how do you pick one of those ways or two of those ways, and then implement them successfully so that you can get really good at finding deals. And then the second half of the
Hmm.
book is on funding the deals. So how do you find the funding for the deals? The whole premise of the funding is um, uh, you don't just want to know one or two ways to fund deals. I think that's what's happening a lot right now because of the interest rates. People are like, "Oh, I need to get really good at creative finance or seller
Right.
financing or sub two,"
Yeah.
and then they get their seller finance or sub two hammer and creative finance hammer, and then they got their conventional loan hammer, and they're just hammering every deal they find with one of these two types of funding, right? And the way funding should actually work is you need to be a fundamentally sound investor. So you need to know what are all of the ways that I could
Hmm.
potentially underwrite this deal. And then let me use the financing that makes the most sense for that deal and my financial situation. Where those two things intersect, that's the best funding for
Yeah.
that deal because seller financing sounds great. You can get a low interest rate. That's awesome. Until you're buying a house that needs $100,000 renovation. The seller ain't going to
Yeah.
finance $100,000 renovation. Now you got to go find $100,000 that's not secured by real estate. That's a hard thing to do if you're a brand new investor,
Hard.
right? Like, I'm not
Hmm.
saying it can't be done, but that's probably a more seasoned investor who has to go do that. That may not be the best financing solution for you and your deal, right? And so you need to understand what are all of the ways I could do it, right? I could have, like, as an example, I bought two duplexes very close together, very similar in price. I used two completely different types of financing to take down each one of those duplexes. Why did I do that?
Hmm.
Because each deal was a little bit different. The situation was different. One deal was a lead that came to me that was also sent to several other people, and it was a good deal. If a good deal
Hmm.
is sent to you and a bunch of other people, what do you immediately have? You've got competition. And so I said,
Yeah.
how do I get this deal and not my competition? Right. And so
Yeah.
the way that I thought I could get that deal was to use speed. And so I contacted the seller and I said, hey, I see your, and I knew I needed it a little cheaper, even though it was a good deal. And so I said, hey, Mr. and
Hmm.
Mrs. Seller, what if I could buy this house $7,000 less than you're asking, but you could have your money in 7 days? Right.
Right.
I'm not going to inspect it. I'm not even going to go see it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, we can put it on a contract today and you can have your money in 7 days. Right? Everybody
Mhm.
else might give them a full price offer, but they're going to do a 30-day close. They're going to send they're going to go out there. The contractor's going to go out there. That's going to get appraisal, and there's all these barriers, right? And so I said, you can go
Yep.
that route, but I can get your money in 7 days. So they took my offer, and so I closed that deal. And the way I did it was I used a private money loan, two different private money loans to take that down because I knew I could get access to that money, close it in 7 days. The other duplex, similar priced, I just used a normal construction loan with that one. That one, 30-day close, 15% down, right? That was better for me because then I don't need the time frame. I don't have the competition on this deal. I can take this deal down with longer
Yeah.
term financing off the top. It's a little
Right.
cheaper for me in the long run, takes a little longer to close. This other deal, more costly for me because now I got to go turn around and refinance this deal later, but at least I got to refinance a
Right.
good deal that I have instead of a deal I didn't get because I was going to use the only other financing I knew. So you got to know all the ways you can finance deals and then use the right financing for the job.
Yeah, it sounds like a really good book. I mean, you're writing about the two biggest problems, like you said,
Yep.
finding deals and then funding them.
Yep.
I wanted to talk more about the podcast
Yeah.
that you're up to on the market. How did that get going? Like, how did you end up becoming a host? And then I wanted to hear just some about like your biggest takeaways from some of your favorite guests,
Oh,
like
yeah.
what you've learned from them that you've implemented in your own life.
That's good. That's good stuff. Yeah, man. How I don't know, bud. Um, here's how I just kind of operate in general as a person. So you're going to meet a lot of people along this path, right? It's networking, right?
Hmm.
Your goal in networking should never be what you get. Your goal
Yeah.
in networking should be about what you can give. If you
Hmm.
consider every relationship that you come across as how can I be of service to this person? And then
Yeah.
actually do the things, be of service without asking for anything in return.
Uh huh.
Um, and do it quickly. Like a lot of the times, I don't know if you've read the book Good to Great, but a lot of what it says is it doesn't take that much effort for somebody to see an encounter with you as a great encounter versus a good encounter, right? So
Hmm.
typically, like if I hear something that somebody needs, I'm not even going to ask them if I can help. I'll just help, right? Whether
Hmm.
they take me up on the help or not is up to them. But the fact that I did it resonates with
Yeah.
people. And then human nature kicks in because they go, this dude, I didn't even know tried to help me with X, Y, and Z problem. And so, like,
Hmm.
they naturally will want to help you or will be willing to help you if and when you need help. Right. And so I think that's
Yeah.
kind of how it happened with Bigger Pockets is I met the producing team and the hosts at a conference and then ended up on the podcast and just always try to figure out a way to be of service. And so I knew that there were some investors within the ethosphere of Bigger Pockets who were interested in doing deals in my market. And I was like, well, I can help by connecting them with people in my network who can help them with their goals. And so I just made lots of connections for
Hmm.
people. And I think that that helped me stay on top of mind and showed them that I wasn't asking for anything. I was just helping. And so when it came time for them, when they needed help in terms of new hosts and things, they thought of me. So I think that's just part of it, But networking is about what you give. I mean, I still do it to this day. I just just this morning connected somebody um, to another resource. I heard a guy speak. What a good speaker on a really cool niche of real estate investing, and I was like, man, that's super cool. That's some stuff I'd like to learn. And so after he spoke, he's surrounded by people, right, who are like, talk to me more about this thing, like people wanting to take, right? And I was like, all right, well, what am I going to do? So I go up to him, I introduce myself, and I say, hey, man, that was really powerful what you just talked about. I think you just helped a whole lot of people. I
Hmm.
appreciate you. That was it. And then
Yeah.
as I was around this person through the conference, I heard him say, hey, he was talking to somebody else. He wasn't even talking to me. I just heard him say, after this, I'm headed back to Dallas. And I was like, oh, I'm going to Dallas after this. I'm going to a real estate. I'm speaking at a
Hmm.
at a mastermind. So this was a higher level mastermind I was speaking at with other high level investors. And I was like, "Hey bud, heard you say you live in Dallas. I'm actually headed there after this. I'm speaking at this mastermind with these high level investors that are in your market. I'd love to just pay for you to have a ticket to go to this mastermind so that you could network with these people." And he was like, "Man, that's amazing."
Mhm.
So I did that. And so I paid for him to go, and now he's
Yeah.
making these other connections with these other investors, and
Yeah.
it's good for him. I haven't asked him for a thing. I haven't asked him for a thing.
Yeah.
But do you think if I did, he would help me?
He's gonna say
Yeah,
yes. Yeah.
100%. So that's how I think it all happened with Bigger Pockets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to you mentioned masterminds. There's a lot of people that are maybe skeptical
Yeah.
of masterminds, but I want to hear how they have impacted your life
Yeah.
and really accelerated your career.
Yeah, man, they're super powerful. Um, don't join them if you're not ready to do something with the information. Because I think sometimes
Yeah.
people think of spending money on education the same way they think of spending money on something at the store, right? Like I spent the money and now I have the thing,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That's not how it works with masterminds. Is you spend the money and what you're paying for is the relationships and the information. And then you have to go
Right.
act on the relationships and the information. So if you're not in a position
Hmm.
where you're in a place to be able to act on any of that, then don't spend the money on masterminds or education. But if you
Right.
are, then boy, it can help accelerate you because
Hmm.
um, look at every successful business person, no matter real estate or not. If they're successful, I guarantee you've heard them say at some point, uh, when I was talking to my coach, right? Like
Right.
they've all
Yeah.
got coaches. They
That's
all
right.
have somebody in their life who's been where they are and who can help them with the challenges that they're going to face. And so investing in education is super, super smart. But there are a lot of people out here who don't do what they teach or who just aren't good
Hmm.
teachers, right? And so I tell everybody if you're going to look at a coaching program or a mastermind, um, a make sure that they're actively doing the thing that you're trying to do in this current market because the market's changing pretty fast, month to month right now.
Yeah.
And so if they haven't done a
Hmm.
deal in 2 years, the environment's different. They may not be able to help you right now.
Yeah. Hmm.
And the second thing is like when you're having a conversation with this person or this person's team, if you
Yeah.
are not on fire about the
Right.
opportunity or the possibility to work with them, that's not for you, right? Like
Run.
and
Run.
it's not necessarily that they may be bad. It's just like there's somebody for
Yeah.
everybody. Like go find the coach that sets you on fire. That's like, yes,
Yeah.
what you are saying and how you are doing it, that's what I need. Right. Like, and but if you're not super hype and ready to go, like if you're not feeling it with that coach, then that just may be not the coach for you. It doesn't mean real estate's not for you. Just go find find the one who lights you on fire. That's where you need to be.
Right. Yeah. You mentioned something in your interview with Brandon Turner that I like that you said you hired hearts.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that? Hiring hearts?
Yeah. Yeah, and this may not be the best business practice, guys. So I like, but I want to hire good people, and I can teach them a lot of the hard skills. Now, this doesn't work for every position. Like your
Hmm.
COO probably needs to know a little bit about your business or your industry or your niche, right? But like, so like my acquisitions manager, I didn't hire her because she's some hard nosed closer is going to go out there and land every deal. I hired her
Right.
because she's got a good heart. She's going to care about the people
Hmm.
she's talking to. She will be an accurate representation of me and how
Yeah.
I would do things. I can teach
Yeah.
her how to have conversations with sellers. I can teach her how to close deals. I can't teach you how to be a good person. Can't teach you how to care about other
No,
people.
that's right.
And so I
Yeah.
hired her because of her heart, and I'll teach her the hard skills. My project manager is uh, a friend of mine. Has been a friend of mine for a long time, and he's just loyal to a fault almost.
Yeah.
But I'll
Yeah.
never have to question: is he working hard? Is he going to take care of my money? Is he going to take care of my business? Is he going to make decisions based on what he thinks is in best interest of the company and not himself? I never have to question that. His heart is in the right place. I can teach him how to manage a project. I can't teach him those other things.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I want to hear before we wrap up, just how you think about your why or your legacy. Like, what are you trying to do
Yeah.
when you look back on things? Like,
Yeah.
what's this all about for you
Yeah. At first,
aside from the financial rewards?
yeah, no. Real estate. I am fortunate enough that like I'm passionate about real estate and I'm passionate about teaching people about real estate, but I don't think that real estate needs to be your passion for it to be
Mhm.
something you do and can get good at. What I love
Yeah.
about real estate and why I do this as my daughter walks by is I want them to be able to be the people they're called to be and not do the thing and be the people they have to be to make money. So
Right.
if who God wants them to be requires them to do something that doesn't produce a lot of income, I don't want
Mhm.
them to not be able to go do or be that person. And so
Right.
I want to build a portfolio that produces income so that if they need to go do something that isn't going to make them a bunch of money, but that's what God's calling them to do, then they can do it.
Yeah. That's great. Henry, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate your time. Was there anything you wanted to touch on that we didn't get a chance to discuss?
No, man, I think this was great, man. You can order the book at biggerpockets.com/deals book, DEALSBOOK. Um, and you can find me on Instagram,
And it's Real Estate
Real
Dealmaker,
Estate
correct?
Dealmaker. Yep. Uh, you-
On pre-sale now. It'll maybe by the time this
yeah,
comes out, it'll be
yep,
available
yep.
on it.
Pre-order it now.
Would you recommend? Bigger Pockets order it?
Yeah, yeah. Go to biggerpockets.com/deals book. That's the best place. I know people say go to Amazon so you can make the Amazon bestsellers list. I really don't care about any of that. I just
Right.
want people to get the book. Uh, um,
And then your socials. How can people get in touch with
yeah,
you?
I'm the Henry Washington on Instagram. And then if you want to learn more about how we teach people how to do this, you can go to the see you at theclosingtable.com, just all spelled out SEEYOUAT, theclosingtable.com. See you at theclosingtable.com.
And are you a little active on Twitter? I think I've been seeing you
Very, very
posting
little
a
active on
bit
Twitter.
lately.
I'm more an Instagram guy. Instagram
Yeah.
and
Seems like the
yeah.
Bigger Pockets people are mostly Instagram people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I never really got into Twitter. I tried. I wanted to. It just wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense. Well, cool. Henry, thanks so much and best of luck with the book. I really have had fun talking with you here today.
Thank you for everything, man. This has been great. I appreciate you.
A mastermind that helps you literally walk from nothing to getting a deal closed
Mhm.
is the kind of mastermind that you want to be in. Anything where it's just, we're going to send you our book.
Yeah.
No. And anything that doesn't provide a lot of value for free is something you shouldn't be involved in.